Well, we'll kick off today's webinar. Thanks for joining the Tantalus group. My name is Trevor Jurgens. I'll be your moderator today, and I'm a consultant with the Tantalus group. The star of the show today is Dr. Alex Sévigny, and he'll be speaking to generative AI and digital transformation. I'll probably jump in a little bit later. I'll be monitoring your questions and answers from the lobby and aggregating those for Alex. So please just put your any questions in the chat for the end. And without further ado, over to you, Alex.
Thank you, Trevor. Thank you very much. And I'm really happy to be here with everyone, and hope to explore the realm of generative AI and its effects on ever-changing digital transformation. Happy to be part of the Tantalus group. I'm a professor at McMaster University, but work with the Tantalus group. We're a global consulting firm. We work with global and local organizations around the world, from energy to banking, lifestyle to logistics. We advise leaders on business opportunities, threats, politics, strategy, marketing, organization and digital, to business transformation, change management, sustainability and mergers and acquisitions. The business cuts across all sectors and geographies. And one of the most important things, I think, is that we retain long-term multi-country relationships with many of the world's leading corporations. So it's a deep learning and understanding and relationship building. If you're interested in learning more, the URL is in the top right, and you can also check out the QR code that's in the top right, just above here. My name is Alex Sévigny. I'm a professor of communications management at McMaster University, where I've taught for almost 25 years. I co-founded and have co-developed over the last 20 years the Master of Communications Management program, which is a program for adult learners, managers, and executives in the communications, marketing, and other areas. And my practice has focused on digital transformation. I've been an active strategic consultant. I've worked in the Americas, Europe, Middle East, and Asia with the Tantalus Group. This gives me a pretty unique perspective on business challenges, government challenges, and so forth. I have a strong background in Canadian politics and not-for-profit. And I have an growing experience in global private sector consulting. My background is actually an interesting blend. While I have taught and worked in communications management and public relations, marketing for the last 25 years, my education was actually in some ways formal or technical. So I come from a linguistics and cognitive science background. What I teach in our MCM program and at the university is data-driven decision-making in communications and marketing and other places, as well as digital and social media strategy, quantitative and qualitative reputation valuation for individuals and organizations, artificial intelligence strategy, and many other areas of note. My partner in today's lecture is Trevor Jurgens. As he introduced himself, he's a long-term Tantalus consultant specializing in digital communications, experienced design, innovation, and AI-assisted graphic design. And he's supported Tantalus clients in North America and the Middle East. So today we're going to talk about the state of generative AI to start. Then we're going to go on talking about AI adoption and engagement, and then talking about some strategic opportunities and risks. At the end, we'll open it up for a Q&A. A little bit about me. So it's nice to know how people use AI. I use AI in many different ways. It's a big part of my practice. You can see me here giving a lecture. AI for me has assisted many parts of my professional life. So for example, insight discovery and ideation for academic research and industry clients. I use AI as a partner to discover new ideas, to hash them out. Whether they're new hypotheses or theses, or whether they're new business theses, I work with AI to puzzle them out. I'm a big walker, and as I walk, I often, a hiker actually, and as I hike, I often will have conversations over with ChatGPT, for example, ChatGPT voice, and hash out an idea as if I were talking to a colleague. It's a very helpful tool for coding or doing formal or technical work. Most of my work is in Python, although I do work in a few other computer languages, and very helpful. I find it sped me up enormously in that area. It's been very helpful for creating, ideating, and then creating analytics dashboards and automation for data pulls, for example, using custom GPTs or AI agents. And that's one of the secrets that I'm going to be talking about today, and I hope you retain, is that figuring out where AI fits into a workflow, where it's replacing a repetitive or procedural task, is one of the most liberating and powerful aspects of this technology. And that's where I find setting up repeated data pulls through an API, doing preliminary data analysis, and so forth, very useful application. I also, on the more sort of strategic management side, I find that generative AI is really helpful in helping me extract insights from engagements. So I've had some kind of campaign that I've been involved with, or even something as simple as a meeting transcript or a large document. Asking the right questions to a generative engine helps you actually do a content analysis and parse through that data and understand it deeply. Competitor analyses backed by deep research. This is an incredibly useful tool for that. I mean, because it puts a lot of information at your fingertips, as well as you can give it the persona of a senior marketing analyst, a senior business analyst, a senior financial analyst, and so forth. And finally, maybe most interestingly, I use artificial intelligence as a sparring partner. And just as I talked to you about ideation at the beginning, I use it to see around corners, looking for strategic foresight. Right? So AI is revolutionizing the way we do our jobs, and we're starting to know what form that revolution will take. We know, and it's been well documented, it's been well commented by thought leaders, industry leaders, both in generative AI and in the world of robotics, as well as in the world of corporate strategic consulting and corporate governance. AI will replace robotic tasks. So if you think about the most robotic thing that you do, AI will probably replace that first, right? AI will require reskilling. We're seeing the deployment of a tool that has the potential to raise productivity, be a force multiplier for people's creativity, and enhance collaboration across the enterprise, as well as integration of data sets, integration of insights discovery, integration of data-driven decision-making, the infrastructure to enable experiment-informed practice, and so forth. But that's a transformation of how business works. That's a transformation of how society works. It's a transformation of how our personal lives work, which means that AI will require reskilling. That's an important and key fact. Training is at the heart of change management in digital transformation with artificial intelligence. And finally, it's a cliche now to hear this said, but it's as true as it was said the first time. The impact of AI is at its least moment right now. This technology is pretty much as not good as it's ever going to be, as bad as it's ever going to be now. And it will improve. It will transform. I mean, LLMs, GPTs that we use now, they may not be the be all and end all. In fact, they're very likely not. So the technology will change and the impact of AI will accelerate. AI can confer immediate and long-term strategic advantage. There's such a thing as first mover advantage in adopting a new technology. I remember, we just had the baseball World Series, and it brought me back to my childhood when my father brought home a Macintosh computer, and it had a program on it called HyperCard. And I loved learning about baseball stats and keeping track of my favorite baseball players and my beloved Toronto Blue Jays, as a child in that database. I learned about computers. I learned about databases. I learned about how my thinking and my love of the game as a fan and as a spectator and as a follower was enhanced, multiplied, made more deeper, made more creative by using the technology. So I had a motivator that pulled that technology into my life. It made that technology real for me. And what was beautiful about that was that it created a lifelong interest in using technology as a part of my thinking. And so digital technology, computers, statistics, coding, formal thinking, logic, has been with me throughout my life, and it's enhanced my life, and it's given me a fluency and a literacy that has been incredibly useful to me. That's a sort of analogy to what an organization can experience when it adopts and encourages adoption of a new technology in a thoughtful, strategic, and ethical way across the enterprise, and encourages employees to explore and grow with the technology. What it enables you to do is, just as I found that this powerful tool was a part of my life because of baseball stats, so too can a new technology like AI or robotics or whatever be a part of your organization's growth pattern. And it becomes enmeshed, and you grow with the technology. So instead of this facing the big hill to climb 3 years from now when everybody else is doing it, you dive in now, you give employees the training, you learn how it fits into your workflows, and you grow with the tech. And that way you get those network effects, you get that first mover advantage. So to oversee and lead an AI fluent organization, one must be AI fluent. And the first step to fluency is using it and learning, right? So innovative organizations are identifying opportunities, defining processes and policies, and allocating resources to learning about this technology, experimenting with it, seeing how it brings us closer to data-driven decision-making and an experiment-informed practice across the organization. AI is at the heart of digital transformation. The hype can be challenging to parse, but a way forward is emerging. I'm writing a book about this stuff, which we've had to rewrite a couple of times because the technology has changed so quickly in the last 3 years. But a colleague of mine at the university, he did his thesis with me, Martin Waxman and I, writing a book that should come out next year. And he makes a joke he says, we haven't had this much AI news since last week. And that's how people are feeling. But we're starting to understand which parts are relevant and how it's going to work for organizations. So the key part right now is look for the parts of your workflow that can be automated: procedural writing, repetitive data analysis, workflows through email and calendar, etc. Overall, what I hope you take from this webinar, and what I hope trainings that I have been fortunate to deliver, teaching at the university and so forth, I'm always seeking to get people to move out of the mindset of FOBO, which is fear of becoming obsolete, rather to shift towards FOMO, fear of missing out. Fear of missing out on being part of a radical new way of interacting, of searching for knowledge, of finding knowledge, and so forth, of doing business. Countries have moved fast on AI policy. A good example, you look at the UAE, 2nd of September 2024, you had a public policy document come out, which was the UAE's international stance on artificial intelligence policy. The United States moved fast. Canada moved fast. The European Union moved fast. Governments are recognizing that this has been a massive impetus to new productivity, new knowledge discovery, and the generation of new wealth. There have been some pretty astonishing estimates on how much AI has added to the United States GDP growth over the last couple of years. I've heard numbers upwards of 70%. So, I mean, pick your numbers, but the truth is, and what's acknowledged universally, is that this has been a huge driver of wealth creation, productivity, boosting, and discovery of new knowledge across the economy over the last 3 years. ChatGPT sprang to 1 million users in 5 days. Incredible. Look at these other ones. This slide is courtesy of Leger, which is a very highly reputable market research firm in Canada. In ChatGPT, 5 days. Instagram, 2.5 months. Spotify, 5 months. I mean, we marveled at Instagram's incredible ability to capture our imaginations because it was about photography and beautiful images. But ChatGPT, 5 days, incredible. ChatGPT now has over 700 million users, and that's not counting, Chinese versions of the technology or other American foundation models like Anthropic Claude or Google Gemini or Perplexity or others. People who use these tools enjoy them and love them. Same study from Leger. 19% of people feel they have an excellent experience. 52% of people feel they have a good experience, set for a total of 72% positive experience with AI. Why? Because it's a natural language interface. It's a new user experience that people feel comfortable with, which is talking. The person who invented the compiler, almost a century ago, a long time ago, always said that she invented the compiler because she wanted people to be able to program in English or natural language. And now with vibe coding, through AI systems, we're getting closer to that. We're getting closer to interfacing and interacting with machines and having them to do highly formal operations in natural language: English, French, Arabic, Swahili, Spanish, German, etc. Usage is increasing. Same study. For work or school, 23%. In a personal context, 36%. It's growing. 47% said yes, they use it. Now, quick difference between algorithmic media and generative AI. We're all used to algorithmic media. We've all used Amazon. We've all used LinkedIn, of course. I'm sure everybody on this call has used LinkedIn. TikTok, who hasn't or Instagram Reels, who hasn't lost half an hour or an hour to a rapid fire succession of Reels that seemed perfectly tuned to our interests and feelings. Now, all this is matching. Pattern matching. These are statistical engines, machine learning, that actually allow you to observe your behavior and then match you to a profile or match you to a set of features that then make suggestions to you based on your history of behaviors on the platform. So Netflix can send you a movie that you want to watch, or a TV show, and then you're like, wow, that's right, because it has observed your behaviors and it's matching you against some kind of typical profile. Generative AI is entirely different. It's a machine that uses neural networks, which I won't go into right now, but it's a technology that's actually quite old. It's dated from the 80s and 90s and earlier. Its predecessors, but what made it possible was deep learning neural networks, which were actually discovered at my alma mater, the University of Toronto, by Dr. Jeffrey Hinton, and whom many people call the godfather or grandfather of AI, or generative AI as we know it now. And what they do is they're based on a model of human learning, which says that we learn, or we understand sentences by always guessing what the next word will be in a sequence, or in the next unit in a sequence. And so these systems learn according to a model of human learning. So it's not just pattern matching like in algorithmic media. It's actually a system that's learning and developing a knowledge base, developing an understanding and the ability to make inferences, the ability to make decisions, follow reasoning, have a chain of reasoning, and so forth, because it has a sort of simple psychological model, which is predicting the next word. So with generative AI, you're training the system, it's learning in a way that we think might be like the way human psychology works. Whereas algorithmic media is really statistical pattern matching, to oversimplify, but that's really what it is. So that's the difference. So there are sort of three types of AI, three goals in AI, which have been branded. One is artificial narrow intelligence. This is just some good terminology to know. ANI is AI that copies an element of human behavior or cognition. So, for example, the ability to read, or the ability to identify images, or the ability to mimic a sound or a voice. And if you look at generative AI right now, they have that capacity, right? And so we are at a position or a place where you could say that artificial narrow intelligence has been achieved, right? ChatGPT, Copilot, and so forth can understand text, produce text, generate images, understand images, and so forth. Okay. Many of the American models are aiming for artificial general intelligence. You'll hear this word over and over again. It's in the charter of OpenAI, which started sort of kicked this revolution off by releasing ChatGPT a few years ago. And they have as their goal to achieve AGI, artificial general intelligence. And that's where it's an ill-defined goal, and there are many different definitions of what it means. It's a bit of a fuzzy goal, but what it basically means is that the AI feels and behaves like a human. So if you've seen a movie like Her, or perhaps Ex Machina, which is a little bit terrifying but very stylish, you'll understand what I mean. It's a robot that feels so human that it can be difficult to distinguish whether it's actually human or not that you're interacting with. Some people say that we won't even know when we get there, but anyways, that's AGI, right? That's the goal. And artificial superintelligence is when the computers have a greater intelligence than all humanity put together, and we can't even understand how the computer thinks. So if you think about it, if you have a pet, I had a cat for 22 years. She passed away, sadly, this year in January. It's a very difficult moment. We get used to our little animal friends, they're close to us, my little research assistant, But anyhow, she could make me do things, right? She could make me give her food, give her pats, pay attention to her, and so forth, sometimes even during webinars. But she didn't understand about mortgages. She didn't understand about salary. She didn't understand about jobs. She didn't understand about heating and so forth, HVAC. When we become the pets and AI becomes the human, then that's artificial superintelligence. Relational AI is permeating our business practices and our economy. So generative AI, text to text, we've all used that. Most of us have used multimodal AI, generating images and video. What some of us haven't used is human sounding voice AI, so audio, video. And this is where you can create an avatar that looks like you. And these are so good right now when you have models like HeyGen or 11 Labs for voice and music, that they really are hard to determine whether it's you or a facsimile of you, right? And you've heard stories of deep fakes and whatnot. So, human sounding voice AI. And where we're going is agentic AI. And that's where AI is not just something you prompt in a reactive way, but it's something that you offer a goal to, and then it can learn from your goal. It perceives what it needs. It perceives what it needs to do, and then it can act and follow its own chain of reasoning. So let's say you want to produce a white paper. You can have a white paper producing agent. It's trained or limited to a database that you have in your company, and you just tell it, I need a white paper based on these parameters. And rather than you prompting it 15, 20, 30 times to get to the final product, it just follows a structured prompt that you've given it and produces a white paper that you can then work with and edit in one go, right? So companies are deploying agents all over the enterprise, whether it's HR, whether it's communications and marketing, whether it's in data science or institutional knowledge repositories, all over the enterprise, operations, supply chain management, obviously, and other places, right? So agents are everywhere, and that will only grow. So the Gen AI journey has been one of a little bit of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. November 2022, OpenAI launches ChatGPT, and to incredible public reception. So you saw 5 days, 1 million users. Now 700 million users for ChatGPT. And I'm using ChatGPT because it's the most well-known example. I mean, obviously, there are other incredibly valuable models. And I've seen data that actually Anthropic's Claude has, in some corporate contexts, exceeded adoption from ChatGPT, ChatGPT's adoption levels. In March and May, spring of 2023, there was a lot of concern around existential threats. Elon Musk got put out a lot of public communication about it. Jeffrey Hinton put out a letter that AI should be a global priority. Canada legislated about it, saying that they created a voluntary code in 2023. In 2024, we saw the UAE put out we saw the UAE's AI policy come out. And many countries across the world have, in 2023, 2024, put out AI policies. And what you saw during 2024 is the development of AI safety institutes. So, my home country, Canada, put ours out and created ours in November 2024. And these are almost like AI embassies where organizations can have bilateral or multilateral conversations about artificial intelligence. I suggest to you to have a look at the AI Safety Institute in your country, should you have one, because it's a clearinghouse for knowledge and also a place where you can learn about AI ethics, AI regulation, and so forth in your jurisdiction, and jurisdictions that your country or your jurisdictional entity interacts with. And of course, the first comprehensive regulation of AI came out of the EU, and that was in January 2025, and that came into force. Gartner does their hype cycle for artificial intelligence. A couple of years ago, AI was at the top of the hype cycle up here, and now we are in the trough of disillusionment. We're somewhere around here. That's a good thing for business, because that's when people start to get serious about AI, and they start to say, how does this fit into my workflows? How does this transform my organization? And you'll see it goes from the trough of disillusionment up to the slope of enlightenment and eventually the plateau of productivity when a technology has been fully integrated into the workflows, policies, and structural organization of a business. Now, AI has not seen fast organizational and enterprise adoption. In fact, this really interesting study, AI as a normal technology, from the Knight First Amendment Institute at Columbia University, has actually documented that AI adoption is slower than media hype suggests. And they make a valuable parallel to the adoption of electricity in factories, which took 40 years to be implemented. What eventually allowed gains from electricity to be realized wasn't just plugging, taking a person's workstation or a horse making something move or a person cranking a crank or whatever and sticking electricity into their workstation. Rather, it was redesigning the entire layout of factories around the logic of electrified production lines. So what that means for organizations in AI is rethinking your processes. So writing them down, documenting them, and then understanding which are the robotic pieces, which are the procedural components of your organizational and enterprise processes, how your departments interact, how your org chart is mapped, how you map processes across the enterprise, and then asking yourself, where can AI revolutionize or change or transform the way we transact between organizational structures on an organizational level, within departments, processes that lead to outputs, whether it's a product, a report, an analysis, automation of information transfer between units, automation of analysis, and so on and so forth. So what will lead to workers having more autonomy and flexibility, which is what happened with electricity, meant reskilling people, hiring differently, training differently, but above all, thinking through how your organization is organized and how it could be reorganized around this new technology that is transferring some cognitive load traditionally associated with knowledge work, white collar work, thinking work onto a artificial intelligence system. So we saw this with expert systems many years ago, where elements of finance and formal work were able to be captured in an expert system. That was a long time ago, decades ago. Now what we're seeing is more of cognitive processes that involve inference, logic, thinking, decision-making, chain of reasoning. So many of the tasks that are the more mundane tasks of white collar work, for example, are capable to be automated, but it has to be done in a way that fits into organizational mandate, fits into how you do business, aligns with your strategic objectives, aligns with your organizational goals, and so forth. So it's actually quite the thoughtful moment in terms of change management, in terms of digital transformation, because it requires at the same time a global enterprise perspective and a minute, finely grained analysis of departmental and individual employee processes. So you can see it's a rethinking of how we do business, how we operate, that this technology requires to really unlock that power of force multiplication and amplification of productivity, creativity, and analysis. There are a lot of risks. I mean, you've all probably read about what happened with Deloitte, and I feel for them because they have adopted the technology, and an excellent organization went out and obviously had some serious problems with AI implementation, and we saw the fine, very significant fine that they had to pay as a result of that crisis that was caused by the way they used AI. And there are lots of areas where we face AI risks. So where AI introduces risk, and I've broken it down into 4 categories here: regulatory compliance issues, so things like technical errors or omission because you aren't compliant, IP infringement, misinformation, data security risks, things like bias and discrimination, negative public perception of AI use. I mean, in different jurisdictions, people feel differently about the pro-social or anti-social impact of AI on society, the economy, the individual. Loss of authenticity and trust. Deep fakes, big problem. You hear, periodically or quite often, deep fakes of CEOs who have been allegedly endorsing stocks or announcing that they're going to invest in a startup or something like that. People are worried about loss of employment. So if your organization is going to roll AI out, you also have to roll out education, communication, and reskilling and training. Otherwise, your employees will be really anxious and concerned, and you may actually proactively lose employees. I know of a friend who attended a seminar about AI, actually one of mine, and he got so excited about this that he went back to his agency and he said, "We're rolling AI out across the enterprise." And he had 4 employees resign right after that. He went back to them and said, no, we're also going to provide reskilling, training, education. We're going to do this together. And then, good for him, they came back. But you have to be thoughtful in how you roll this out. You have to bring people with you. You can also, of course, have sort of stakeholder distrust. So, crisis, which can lead to crisis escalation or, problems of defamation and legal liability and so forth. So just one more point on this AI risk situation. Eliezer Yudkowsky, philosopher of technology, author, he just put out a book, and he has very provocatively called it, "If anyone builds it, everyone dies." Yuval Noah Harari, famous historian, commentator on technology and sort of human cognition over the centuries. Well, he hasn't lived over the centuries, but he's commented on it. And here he says, AI has gained some remarkable abilities to manipulate and generate language, whether with words, sounds, or images. AI has therefore hacked the operating system of our civilization. So again, a bit of a grim perspective or a negative perspective. And Jan LeCun, a little bit different. He says that AI is missing something really big to reach not just human level intelligence, but even dog or cat level intelligence. Until we do this, we are not even going to have human level intelligence. We're not going to have dog or cat level intelligence. And what he's talking about is memory and experience. These systems are limited in the way they can interpret the world and the way they can generate new knowledge. Like there's a whole debate right now about whether they can be scientists or discoverers of new physics theorems and whatnot. They're very good at being trained on problems that we already understand, or that for which there is an output, like a mathematical equation or a mathematical problem for which there is a solution. But generating new knowledge out of pure creativity, there's a real debate about whether the current technology of LLMs, GPTs is going to be capable of getting there. Now, does that mean that they're going to not be useful to enterprise? Absolutely not. Hugely useful, because they can mimic, you remember I talked earlier about artificial narrow intelligence, aspects of human cognition, right? So they can be useful for analysis, for text generation, idea generation, all the things I talked about. But the big fears about AI taking over the world, replacing humans, or as Jeffrey Hinton often says, is there any example of less smart technology, less smart entity controlling a smarter entity? And the answer is maybe in limited ways. Is the likelihood that this version of AI is going to do that? I would say I lean towards Jan LeCun's perspective that LLMs and GPTs are not the version of artificial intelligence that will get us there. So last few points before we go to questions. AI risk mitigation strategies. A few pointers for you, and these are things that I emphasize when I work with organizations. And at the top of the list, human oversight, human gates. Humans should have oversight over workflow processes. In the end, nobody's going to interview the AI in a deposition, in a legal case, speaking to a parliamentary or a legislative committee in government, or a journalist or an angry shareholder or stakeholder. They're going to want to talk to a person. So there has to be human oversight. Workflow processes alignment to ethical guides checked. So you need to have ethical guidelines. And this is key. You need to have responsible AI guidelines and so forth. Training and education. Workflow processes must be explained and their importance taught. How can you expect an employee to be ethical and responsible if they don't understand the tool that they're using and the implications of its use? Regular audits. Compliance should be audited regularly. There should be some kind of task force across an organization that oversees AI. We're at that point where I think it's a best practice to have a task force. You're going to roll your eyes. Oh my gosh, Professor Sévigny, Alex, task force. It doesn't have to be a make work thing. In fact, I think it's a valuable thing where you have somebody from legal, somebody from communications to ensure reputation, brand, voice, and whatnot. Somebody from IT, obviously, somebody from operations, perhaps. It's going to be configured differently for every organization, but some kind of overseeing body. And then finally, reporting. There has to be reporting from departments, from parts of the organization, up to some sort of decision-making or responsible body on outcomes. How are you using AI? And that means finding organizational allies to help you implement processes and risk mitigation strategies. Non-traditional allyships across the organization. I'll give you an example from my experience. Marketing or communications, HR, with IT, with operations, with other sides of the more technical and quantitative part of the organization. Which means that you also need governance and roles. Boards have to think about this, right? We have to make governance visionable and actionable. People have to understand governance. They have to be able to implement the governance. Whether people are following responsible AI has to be tracked in a dashboard that actually reflects their behaviors, so that it's something that where they see that if they do something, does it map onto our responsible AI guidelines. So you need a RACI for AI, determine who is responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. We need to evaluate risk for AI, not just for your enterprise system, whether it's a Microsoft or Google that you use across your enterprise, which might include Copilot or Gemini, or now Copilot includes Claude as well. But you also, let's say you use other technologies like Canva, like Adobe, like other tools. You have to look at vendor risk and what are their data processing agreements? Are the data safe? And I would say you need a crisis playbook. And this is very important for boards. You need a crisis playbook. You have to be able to detect a crisis, triage, escalate, and then remediate. And you have to practice these things with the responsible parties. Again, see, that's why I talked about having a task force. Okay. Last slide. Enterprise generative AI from hype to implementation. Think through your workflows. Outline use cases. Research the tools that you may or may not want to use. Develop protocols and policies. Develop guidelines. Determine skills and training that you need. Then map and test your workflows internally. Test for efficacy, then move to effectiveness, then test them for efficiency. Once you have new AI-driven, AI-centric workflows that are efficient and efficacious, effective and efficacious. Gather feedback from employees, gather feedback from customers, gather feedback from users of your AI systems, people who interact with your chatbots and so forth. Assess implications for organizational culture. How are your employees perceiving it? How are your shareholders perceiving it? How are government, responsible parties in government that you interact with perceiving your use of AI? And of course, billing, and then adapt as required. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, consider responsibility and reporting. So this is a big deal. You know, this is a generational, maybe even an epochal change in how we do business, how we transact our lives, how we organize and structure our work, social lives, how we do our investments, how we get health information, and so on and so forth. Everything is going to be transformed by artificial intelligence. The web, computers transformed us first in the 80s and 90s. The web transformed us after that. Social media was the next big transformation, mobile technologies. And now it's generative artificial intelligence and robotics, as well as connected technologies, or augmented reality, virtual reality, and so forth. So the Tantalus group, we offer training in artificial intelligence, generative artificial intelligence. And I'm very happy to do it. I've done these trainings all over the world. I love doing them, as you can probably see from the enthusiasm that I bring to this webinar. So first, we talk about the intro to Gen AI. What is Gen AI? Where does it come from? We give you hands-on skills with text, image, videos, project management, and deep research. We also take a look at responsible AI. The second training course that we offer, Gen AI 2.0, State of Gen AI, what's new? And here we give you hands-on. I give you hands-on, or whoever's giving the seminar, I've given them mostly. Hands-on building a custom GPT and blueprinting AI agents, risk management, and building AI-ready processes. There we dive deeper into what I talked about today. Level 3, strategic Gen AI, hands-on alignment with mission, vision, values, strategic objectives, and so forth. Mapping your function for AI transformation, process building. So we help you understand how your organization could integrate AI across the enterprise, across specific functions, communications, marketing, and so forth, okay? And fourth level, Gen AI for C-suite, senior leadership team, and boards, okay? So here we really focus in on strategy, risk management, governance, and enterprise-wide AI readiness. What do boards need to know? What questions do you need to ask yourselves? I was just speaking to the board of a very large Canadian Crown agency in the health sector. And we had a wonderful conversation about, and they deal with very high risk topics, people's health, people's well-being. So we talked about strategy, we talked about risk management, we talked about how do you integrate this technology into communications and enterprise workflows in a way that will inspire trust and maintain reputation. So, and if you need to think through AI adoption, we also offer strategic management consulting services. We can help guide you through this process. And there's